Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report. Wherever you get your podcast, you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill. You know it helps out. You hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And of course, you can always find my work on ESPN.com. A reminder, I'm down to 2 podcasts a week for the next several weeks until we get much closer to training camp. And I'm trying to take some time off. So a few of these podcasts over the next couple of weeks, they're just going to be separate podcasts. They're not going to be, if there's news that breaks, go to ESPN.com. We're trying to take some time off. So some of these things, they'll have good interviews on there, etc. But for the news, ESPN.com. So that's it from that perspective. So today I'm joined by Washington Commanders linebacker Khaleke Hudson. I have a nice audio interview with him, just several minutes long, that I conducted near the end of minicamp, because I just wanted, I'll explain a little bit more in a minute on Hudson, but I just kind of wanted to, talk to him because I think he's a key player at that position this year. And even if it's just for depth. So I talked to him. You'll hear that in a few minutes. Before I get to there, I wanted to go over a couple topics with you, including one on Khaleke Hudson. But let's start with the preseason expectations for this franchise, or at least expectations from outside the Washington Commanders bubble. And I would include media in that bubble because we're there every day. You have a different perspective than people outside that bubble and how things compare. And it's why I always try to bring on outside perspectives for you on this show, because I think it's important to hear what people outside of Washington think or believe about this franchise. Doesn't mean they're right. It's just a different perspective. And what I've always learned over the years, that the narrative outside here, it sometimes takes a little bit of while to reach people who are in the national media or prognosticators or whatever. And that's part of the game, folks. So, when you look around, and I'm starting to see people making their preseason record prediction or their record predictions, et cetera, and there isn't a ton of optimism outside of here for this franchise. So why is that? And you can probably guess some of the reasons yourself. And I don't think I'm going to be telling you anything revelatory or earth-shattering necessarily. But, and first of all, does it matter what they say? No, I just think it's a different perspective, because this is the perception of this team outside of Washington. Does it make it accurate? Does it make it right? Not always, because again, a lot of times they're just flat out wrong, and that's okay. We're wrong too. You're wrong as well, because the NFL season is kind of crazy and unpredictable, and it comes down to injuries. It comes down to a lot of things that are really hard to predict. But you also have to know the franchise. And one thing I'll say, being around these players and the coaches in the spring, is there was a good vibe around them. There was good energy around them. Why is that? I think part of it is they feel really good about where they're at, and they feel good about themselves. They like the energy that Eric Bieniemy brought. I can tell you, again, I played it on here. Offensive guys loved it. The defensive guys loved it, because he brings that energy. And as Curtis Samuel said, when you have a coach that brings that kind of energy, you as a player have to match it. You can't let the coach be the only one bringing the energy, because if he is, it's going to be a long season. So, all that matters, but that's stuff that people outside here aren't going to feel at this point. Early in the year, if they win, you'll see those stories being written a lot by people outside here. Hey, the impact of this, the impact of that, and the vibe that's within the team. And I'll go back to a couple of years ago. They're coming off a 7-9 year in Ron Rivera's first season. Played well at the end of the year. Good playoff showing against Tampa Bay. And expectations were higher going into the next year. People were predicting them to win the NFC East. People on ESPN, the national prognosticators, predict them to win the NFC East. And so, but what we would hear and what I saw concerned me by the end of camp. In fact, I downgraded my preseason prediction by a game just because of, and I probably should have done it by a couple games, but just based on what you saw and heard during camp. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't something where you said, oh, I think they're going to be pretty good. It was more like, oh, I think there's some concerns here. And some of those concerns were expressed by Ron Rivera. I don't think people paid enough attention to what he was saying at that time. Bram and I talked about it on this podcast, about how his concerns about the maturity level of this team. He was sounding alarms, and I don't think people were heeding those words enough. But you saw it in practice. You could feel that something was just missing a little bit. And some of that was like Ryan Fitzpatrick did not look great during practices. So there were definite concerns going into that year, but the maturity level was something that Ron Rivera harped on a number of times. And I think that was part of the problem that year. Other issues as well, but I think that was definitely one of the problems as well. And now, when you talk to them internally now, you're not hearing those kind of concerns. You're feeling it. You're sensing excitement from them about what they're building. Are they right? Are outside people right? The beauty of the NFL is eventually we'll find out. And let me tell you this, you're allowed to have your own optimism here. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong for having that. Now, just keep it in check because I think there's a lot of unknowns. But you're allowed to believe that maybe they've got it going right because of X, Y, and Z, and this move or that move, or this player can mature, that guy can do this. That's fine because there's no proof that you're wrong at this point either. So hang on to those. And it's, as a fan, what you want more than anything is hope and faith. You have faith and you want that hope. So are you wrong for having that? No. If you're predicting 12, 13 win seasons, I tell you, you might need to lay off the juice a little bit. But going in there thinking that, hey, they could do this, they could be going here like 9, 10 wins, you might got to think you're crazy. No, they do have a harder schedule. So does everybody else in the NFC East. And in fact, of the 4 NFC East teams, I believe their schedule is the easiest, albeit a hard one. I think they're all like in the top 10 for hardest, the strength of schedule for whatever that means. It's based on last year's winning percentage. Teams aren't always the same, but the bottom line is their schedule is tough, but so is everybody else in that divisions. So, and when you look at the expectations, of course, Philly and Dallas are going to be ahead of everybody. And I think they should be based on what they've done over the years. So that's one of the things that I would say, like one of the reasons why people look at it here like that is because of what this team hasn't done in a long time. And that's win. They haven't had a winning record since 2016. It's a long time. They haven't won a playoff game since 2005. They're not going to get the benefit of the doubt when you're turning to a young quarterback like Sam Howell without much experience. And I'm going to get to him in a minute. But I think there's that benefit of the doubt that they don't get at this point. The way you get that is to build a good organization that wins. If the Patriots were in this situation, they probably get more benefit of the doubt because it's Belichick. They had won, previous regimes, etc., or with previous teams. So you're going to get the benefit of the doubt, but this place will not. And I think that's something you always have to keep in mind when people are picking them, is that they're always going to be kind of judged subconsciously, consciously, whatever, by things that have happened here prior and by the way the team has been prior. So that's one thing. And I do think the Sam Howell situation plays into it as well, because I get that question a lot, whether I'm on the radio, whether I'm just talking to people casually, people in the media, whatever. Are they really going to go with Howell? Do they really think he can be that good? Is that for real? And the answer is yes, they are going to go with him, and they have been consistent in their thoughts on him. But if you're outside this bubble, the way you're looking at that is the guy was a 5th round pick. He started one game and they're going to turn it all over to him based on that. And that's what's hard for people to grasp. And like, do you really believe that this guy can do that? And we can sit here and say, like, look, personally, I like his traits. I think there are things that this kid could do. And I think he's got a chance to be good because I see the traits. He's got a good arm. He makes quick decisions. He can get out of pressure. I think those are all good things. And he throws a good deep ball. And the question to me, will he consistently make good decisions? Will he consistently take care of the ball as well? Because if he doesn't do the latter, then it's going to put the team in a bad spot, and that's going to affect the W's and L's. So can he do all that? But he's got a chance. And the funny thing is, I almost look at this and say, if this were Ron Rivera's second year, I think people might look at it differently because he's going into a year where it's really a must-win season for him, and he's putting his hopes on a quarterback like Sam Howell. Now I know some of this is they're hoping to develop a kid who has a rookie contract so they can afford to keep the D-line together, et cetera, et cetera. But think about it. Would Rivera really pin all his hopes on a guy in this situation just because of that contract? I don't think so. I know they like him. Now, the 5th round pick thing, we can all say, people can say, oh, he would have been a 1st round pick if. Well, the bottom line is he wasn't. So he's going to be judged that way, fair or not, right or wrong. You're okay, look at it and say, I think this kid can be this. I think the NFL missed on this. Go ahead, have at it. You know why? Nobody, you're not wrong yet. We don't know who's right or wrong here. The NFL may have made a mistake in not picking him ahead of the 5th round and letting Washington pick him when they hadn't planned on taking a quarterback, but they felt they had to because they had him in the second as a 2nd round rated quarterback. If they had picked him in the 2nd or 3rd round, then I don't think that a lot of people would I think people would look at it differently because a lot of people thought he'd go there. But then when he went in the 5th round, they're judging him by that standard, or by that selection. Fair? We'll see. Again, you're allowed to have that faith in him because he has shown enough to make him really intriguing and interesting. He has shown that he has that good arm. He has shown that he can throw the deep ball. He has shown some good traits in the pocket, but has he shown it all? Can he do it for a course of a year? I don't know. Can he be a good quarterback? Yes. But when will he get there? I don't know that either. And nor does anybody else, which makes this intriguing. As a reporter, it's really interesting to write about because we don't know. I think Bieniemy will have a good impact on him. But what I also know is he's a young quarterback learning a new offense, and you have a new coordinator teaching a new offense to an entire group. Does that happen overnight? Does it mesh overnight? No, that takes time to build. Can they win while they are enduring whatever growing pains the offense is going to endure? Can you continue to win? Do they ask him, what kind of burden are they putting on him? And it doesn't mean it's all run, pass. That's not how you take the pressure off him. You do it by putting him in good situations. And you do that, but you can run some pass plays that are not the most difficult to read or whatever. And it may be a little bit more simplistic sometimes, but you can put him in favorable situations as a passer based on the action of a play, based on, the screen game, right? This screen game should be a lot better than it was. If you have a coach that adheres more to the details than they've had, I think that helps as well. So don't put him in a bad spot to help maximize what he can do and allow the team to win while he develops, because he's got to develop. He's going to go through growing pains. How much is it going to affect the offense? So when you're looking from an outside, again, as a fan, you can sit there and say, I think he's going to be good because of this. That's fair. That's your right. Have at it. But it's also, if you're looking outside, if you were looking at another team that had a guy in this situation, how would you assess that? And what I always do as a reporter, because I've learned this over the years, even as a fan of teams, like I'm a big fan of Ohio State. Sometimes I see a guy that's not playing or not doing as well. I'm like, oh, he's really talented. What don't I know about this situation? Or what do they see in this guy who's playing more that maybe I look at and say, oh, how could that guy be playing? He was only a 3-star recruit. Why is he playing over this 5-star? Well, what is that 3-star guy showing in practice that gives the coaches confidence to play him? So I always kind of take it from that perspective about what don't I know about the situation versus making some sort of like, oh, they're crazy for doing this. I always kind of think there's something else going on there, good or bad. And in this case, I think you have to ask yourself, why would Rivera trust his 4th year, a year that's crucial for him, with the guy in this position? It's because he likes him and they like him and Bieniemy likes him. You have to understand that. So, but from an outside perspective, I can understand why they do it. From a fan perspective, I understand why you have some hope that maybe this kid can be better than what people think he can be. So there you go. That's my little spiel on expectations. In the end, they don't matter much. They're fun stuff, but it gives you I just sometimes like as a measuring stick of how the perception of the organization outside here. The other thing is what we don't know is what's the impact of the sale. Now, when we were around the team in the spring, you sensed a different energy. Was it all because they're going to be sold? They're all happy because these guys were being paid by Dan Snyder. I don't think a lot of them really care who signs their checks as long as there's somebody signing them. But then there are others that he would have a relationship with. Are they all going to be thrilled that he's gone? I can't say that. They don't think like you guys do. This guy signing the $1 million checks from them. But what they're not going to be tired of is all the toxicity around the franchise. That's what's going to evaporate. And that's something that I think that can lend a boost to them. What's the energy that the fans provide? Because when this whole toxic thing, it's not just the reporters' questions. Make no mistake, like we go in there and ask, something happens and you go like, oh, we got to ask about this today. And the players know it and it becomes a little bit of a topic. But then they go on social media and they see stuff there. They hear what's being said about them. They're reading what's being said about them in many places. And that kind of, there's that negativity kind of envelops a lot of players. And you can either, I do think, and I've had players tell me this, I think it's made them closer unit. And that's something you can't always measure. That negativity or that, building that wall around you to kind of like, hey, nobody else, this is what everybody else thinks of us. This is what we think of each other. and it can develop a closer knit group. And I do think that this team has been pretty close the last couple of years. How will you get a better bounce from that? And if conversely, I would have people. Last year, I had somebody that I really respect and really like as a good friend of mine in the business. Something happened in the summer. I can't remember what it was, but I get this text from like, they're going to be a disaster. They may not win 4 games. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. I knew they would. I knew he was wrong. I knew he was being hyperbolic. And of course, I'm like, there's no way. They just have a better roster than 4 wins. That's why I see people predicting 5 wins. And I have to believe it's because of Howell and the unknown, because the roster is better than that. That would mean a 3-game decrease over last year, and I think they're in a better spot. Now, the quarterback is the question, but I think they're going to be in a better spot with the offense in general because of Bieniemy, and I think because of Logan Thomas being better. It'll at least provide some help, right? More help. It has to. So that's where I kind of look at that. But if you're kind of looking at the negative Snyder bounce, then you'd have to look at the positive side, because there's going to be a lot more energy, positive energy around this franchise. You're not going to be reading stories about like, oh, nobody wants to deal with this franchise. Nobody wants this franchise in their backyard. Nobody wants to deal with this owner that owns your team. And you want to take pride in playing for the NFL, for an organization, but it's hard to do that when there's all this stuff around there that whether you like or dislike the guy, all that attention existed and all those things were being written and said, and wouldn't it affect where you go to work? So it affected them too. And I would have players that would tell me that over the years, and when they would be in Washington, they would get drafted by Washington, then they'd leave and go to another team, and they realize, oh, it's not like this everywhere. And so I think they felt just mentally better because of it. So there has to be a bounce from that as well, and not having to answer questions all the time about, hey, your owner's under investigation. What do you think? And then it becomes a topic, or you're going on social media and you're reading it. It's like, this organization sucks, blah, blah, all that stuff. It adds up to, a big cauldron of toxicity that you have to work hard to not let it get you down. And so the reverse can be true. Like, what kind of a bounce will they get from not having to deal with all that?
The adventure park is ziplining through the trees. It's climbing from platform to platform. It's even an axe throwing competition with your friends. But what the adventure park really is opportunity. Reconnecting with friends and family, accomplishing a challenge, and making lasting memories. So book your visit today and choose your own adventure.
That's an unknown, and we don't know. And will it be a big bounce? I don't know, but I guarantee you, if they go out and win their first couple games, you're going to be reading that story like, oh, freed of all this, now they're just a better team. And maybe then they're going to take a different look at what's going on here from a roster perspective. But you got to win those games. It all starts with that. I would always tell players, you want to change the narrative, you have to go win. That changes the narrative. You go out and win this year. You go out and win 10 games this year, 9. Like, what's the narrative going to be about this team next year? And if Howell goes out and plays well, like, you're going to see a different narrative at this time next year. Can they live up to it? So anyway, that's just my little spiel on the whole preseason predictions. Again, take it for what it's worth. They're just perceptions. And it's, we don't know who's right or wrong. That's the beauty of this game. You're allowed to think one thing. They're allowed to think another. It gets settled for over several months in the fall. Now, let's go back to Khaleke Hudson, because I wanted to talk a couple weeks ago for ESPN. We had to pick out a guy who was like the surprise standout player of the spring. And I don't know that there were a ton of alternatives or a ton of options here, because guys who were standing out, like, is Logan Thomas, was he a surprise standout? No, because he's a good player. He's healthier. So should you be surprised? No, because by the end of the year, he was showing as a receiver what he could do again. And he showed it again this spring. The key for him will be as a blocker as well, and how he's being used. But I think the surprise for there wasn't so much that he was looking good. It's how often they were going to him just in the red zone and, other situations. And I think that's what I say, like, is a good development for them, is getting him involved in certain situations, getting him involved more. But is he a surprise? No. So how many guys would be considered surprises? Because Emmanuel Forbes being around the ball, that's what he showed in college. Antonio Gibson, I've been in good spring. Well, that's the skill. Those are the skill sets he have. I think the surprise has always been that they haven't figured out a way to get him the ball more or get him into more space situations and tap into all that. And I know there were a lot of times, even coaches now will say like, yeah, we'd hear that, and then it wouldn't come true. So, but anyway, so I picked Khaleke Hudson because he was put into a starting role and he played fast, just like he did in that preseason, or excuse me, in the season finale against Dallas. That opened, I think, some eyes in the coaching staff. It did not open Khaleke Hudson's eyes, and he'll explain why in a few minutes. But for the coaches, even in the spring, I think I told you in the spring, like he was a guy that what they did at linebacker to add more depth would be determined by how they felt he progressed in the spring. And clearly they feel pretty good because to this point, while I'm recording this, they haven't added anybody else at linebacker. That's what they think of, and it's by the actions. And so that's what he showed. So in the spring, because Jamin Davis was out, because they wanted Cody Barton to work, at least the line was they wanted him to work with the second unit to kind of get him more comfortable with the defense while the starters could play at a certain speed so he wouldn't hold guys up. Whether or not that's actually the reason, we'll find out in the summertime. But, it sounds plausible, but is it, we'll see. But anyways, what it did is it gave Hudson a chance to work with the starters, to play at a certain speed, to show the coaches more what he could do. And they came away liking what they saw. So that's why I picked him as my standout guy. But it's also why I wanted to talk to him at the end of minicamp, because he did, you saw stuff. And so, could he be that depth guy that they need there? Because ultimately, they signed Cody Barton for a reason. They obviously like Jamin Davis, and I think they feel like this can be a really good year for him. So, but you still needed more depth behind them. And that's what Hudson can add. And if he doesn't continue to progress in camp, then you have to look for someone else to add there, because you do need someone else. And the other thing, if Hudson develops, he adds the versatility to the defense. He can be a big Buffalo nickel type for them. They have Cam Curl who can play that. Obviously, they have Quan Martin that they drafted who can help there as well. But if you can have a linebacker fills that role, then that also adds some more versatility to the packages you can run. And so that's where Hudson can really help. In the past, they have tried him in certain roles in coverage and all that. And to be honest, I didn't think he did as well. That's why he didn't play more. But in that last game as a full-time guy, he played a lot. He played with a lot of speed and just good recognition, et cetera, et cetera. And good recognition leads to good speed, or to allow you to play to your speed. And I think he did that. So how he develops this summer will be crucial just to the depth of that position and how you can feel about the linebacker spot. And, and listen, let's be honest, man, you're a linebacker playing behind this front. You better have a good year. And so like if Davis or Barton don't, that's a disappointment, because there's too much talent up front. And what you always hear is like, oh, when you got those guys up front, you should be at a certain level. And I agree with that. So those guys need to play to a certain level. But, again, with Hudson, you have depth, or the potential for depth is there. He just needs to continue to show in the summertime what he showed during the spring. And I think that's where, when the pads come on, that's when you learn more about where he's at based on, or building off of what he's shown. And then that Ravens game, or the Ravens scrimmage, I should say, that's why those joint practices are so big, is because you can work on situations. You get a much stronger feel for where guys are at. And that's why even Rivera, going back to Sam Howell, would talk about the importance of those couple practices, because it gives you a different look against a different looks against a different defense. And you go through situations, you learn so much more, maybe more so than even what you would learn in playing a couple series in a preseason game, because you can control, hey, you want to work on the red zone, you want to work on third down, you want to work on 2 minute. You get a chance to watch this guy run 10 plays, each of those over a couple of days. That adds up to a lot of information. The same will be true with Hudson. Anyway, that's why I want to talk to him. So stay tuned for that in a couple of minutes. Lastly, on Jason Wright. Now, the Washington Post and even the Athletic kind of wrote something late last week about how, the Harris group wasn't going to make any move there, and would wait till the end of the season. But if you've been listening to me for a while, it's something that I have mentioned on here as well previously. And, that this has been the plan all along. So this wasn't like they were sitting there deciding, and then, okay, we're going to keep him. The plan all along has been for the Harris group to keep him. And I'm not trying to disparage any, trust me, I'm not disparaging any reporting. I'm just telling you what I know. And what I know is that had been the plan all along. And it's what I'd heard, again, from the start, and that's why you'd say like and I told you they're gonna get the season to show whether it's right, whether it's Ron Rivera, because it was just gonna be too late in the game to make any move. So the smart move, the patient move, which is a smart move here, is to evaluate, see with your own eyes what you have. I can tell you, like they've been asking around on about Jason Wright, collecting information about him to see what people think and like what do they have in him. So they're collecting information here. Then they can combine it or pair it with the information they're going to glean from their own firsthand observations about how he runs that business side. Where are things at with the suites, with the sponsorships? Does it get any better? And they can make up their mind. Like you can have your own opinion on Jason Wright. And I think there's a lot of things that you can go over, a lot of things that can be discussed, good and bad. You hear it both within the organization. But what we don't know is what they'll find out is what was the Snyder effect here, because that's real. We've seen it with coaches. We've seen it on the business side. Like that Snyder effect is real. And it's a very unique place to work because of what they had to deal with over the years. So he came in at a chaotic time. Were some of these mistakes all on him? Was it on Snyder? Was it a combination? What did he learn over his 3 years? Does he become a strong team president for them? And, but again, and I'm not even saying he will or won't, but what I am saying is, I think they're taking the right approach here, which was, again, saying all along they would use a season to evaluate what they have here. First priority is stadium. Second priority is evaluating what they have here and then making a decision from there. And then all the other things will kind of fall off from there, building up trust with the fans, et cetera, building up sponsors and building the business side, because there's a lot of things that they haven't been able to do. And the money thing is real. And there are even like for little things, like if you wanted to improve morale there, well, you need to give more people raises because a lot of them still lag behind where their counterparts are with other franchises, but there's no money to do that right now. So when you bring in Harris, let's say a little thing like FedEx, once there's an ownership change, FedEx can get out of paying for the name rights. Well, this team would love for that to happen because they can go sell the naming rights to the stadium to somebody else and make a lot more money. That infusion of money helps fund things, more sponsorships, more suite holders signing up. All that stuff will help this franchise start to grow in the way they want. Now, how much will, again, with the Harris Group and Jason Wright, they'll make that determination. They'll see what he can do and can't do. And I think you go from there. But I think the smart move has always been, and it's what we talk about here, the smart move has always been to just see what you have and evaluate. When Dan Snyder came in, he did not do that. He came in and made instant moves, even though he said he wouldn't. He came in and fired a lot of people right away. And a lot of people were let go. A lot of really good people, were let go. And I think it kind of set a tone for the way he operated. And, it's funny because you'd hear this over the years. Early on, I had somebody very prominent in the organization said the way they operated was fire, aim, ready. And that was true the entire time that he owned this franchise. Fire, aim, ready. Make a move, then worry about the consequences later, or maybe deal with them later, or not even thinking about the consequence. You just make a move without thinking about it. Not a good way to operate. And so I think that's why I think you'll like the Harris Group, just because I get the sense that he at least puts a lot of thought into what he's going to do or moves he wants to make. And this is one of them. And I think it's the approach you want him to take. If it was several months ago, maybe he takes a different approach throughout the organization, but it's not. You can't do that when training camp is about to start. And I think, again, the prudent move is to evaluate, see what you have, and then make a decision. So there you go. That's it from me. Now, here's my conversation with Washington Commanders linebacker Khaleke Hudson. Because that one game was really good. So, how different do you feel now? Do you feel different?
No.
Okay.
I don't feel no different. I have the same intensity, the same focusness every day I come to practice. And since I came to the NFL, I've been working hard every single day, just waiting for an opportunity, and that game was an opportunity.
What do you feel you could show there that maybe you've been waiting to show?
Just show that I can be a playmaker, show that I'm fast, aggressive, I can cover, and I can be a big help to our defense.
So what do you feel like, how have you carried that out to here this spring? What did you feel, do you feel you were able to carry that out here?
Yes, I feel like I'm able to carry that out, and I have been able to do that, from the help of my teammates and help with my coaches, and, just working hard every day, working, to perfect my craft, and to be the best player that I can be. That's my focus every day.
When you don't get those, like that number of, that was a big opportunity.
Yeah.
So when you only get a few opportunities a game, and if it doesn't go perfect, what does that do for you? Like, how hard is that to deal with? Because, you know what I mean? If you only get like 6-7 reps, whatever, and if it doesn't go perfect, how is that hard to deal with?
Well, that's the goal, to have every rep as flawless, as perfect as it can be. But, in real life, it's not going to be that way. So it's just knowing every opportunity that you get, take full advantage of it, no matter if the ball is not coming your way at all. Just make sure you're sprinting to the ball, because every play is on film forever. And that is who you are. That is you represent your last name. Your last name is what you put on film. So why not every play you be balls out?
Were there some plays that you made that you think really didn't open your eyes, but maybe opened theirs? And that, again, I go back to that game because I think that could be a springboard for you in their eyes, right?
Yeah. I 100% think there were some plays that opened the coach's eyes, but me personally, I feel like I've been doing a lot of that my whole career. Really, it's just just waiting for my opportunity. That's all. And your opportunity is not going to come whenever you want it to. It's going to come whenever it's the perfect time. So whenever it's that time, it's time to show everybody what you're about.
How much have you talked to DeMar this offseason? Have you been able to talk to him?
I talked to him a couple of times. He's been pretty busy, but he has a celebrity softball game coming up that I'm involved with, and I'm going to be in. And I'm pretty sure we're going to do our kids football camp we do this year every year. So he hasn't announced when the date is, though, but I'm pretty sure I'll be hitting him up soon to figure it out.
What do you expect for yourself? Last thing you expect for yourself this season now? I keep going back to that because I think it really opened their eyes. What do you expect for yourself this season? What I expect from myself is to be a leader, be one of the hardest workers on the field, and just play ball and just stay true to who I am. Every opportunity I get, just take full advantage of it, and everything will unravel. Thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Khaleke for joining me. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Have a happy July 4th, and I'll talk to you Thursday.